On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1973. We're going to be taking a look at John Martyn, and he's going to be performing May You Never. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So let's get John up on screen and see how he gets on.
May you never lay your head down without a hand to hold me. You'll never make your bed out in the cold. You're just like a good and close brother to me, and you know that I love you true. You never talk dirty behind my back, and I know that there's those that do. Please, won't you bury it in mine? Love is a lesson to learn in our time. Please, won't you bury it in mine for me? May you never lay your head down without a hand to hold me. You'll never make your bed out in the cold. You're just like a good warm sister to me, and you know that I love you true. You're holding open blade to stab me in the back, and I know that there's those that do. Please, won't you bury it in mine? Life is a lesson to learn in our time. Please, won't you bury it in mine for me? May you never lay your head down without a hand to hold me. You'll never make your bed out in the cold. You're just like a fat and crazy brother of mine, and you know that I love you true. You never talk dirty behind my back, and I know that there's those that do. Please, won't you bury it in mine? Love is a lesson to learn in our time. Please, won't you bury it in mine for me? May you never lose your temper if you get in a barroom fighting. May you never lose your woman overnight. May you never lay your head down without a hand to hold me. You'll never make your bed out in the cold. May you never lose your temper if you get in a barroom fighting. May you never lose your woman overnight. May you never lose your woman overnight. May you never lose your woman overnight.
And there we have it. As always, the link to this video is going to be in the description below, so you guys can head over there if you want to watch it again to take in the amount that is going on in this performance. I know that with a lot of the camera work, we get a lot of close-ups of John's face, which is great from an artistic point of view, but I know that all the guitarists out there would want to see that fretboard and the amount of work that John gets through with all of the fills that he's playing with his left hand, the sus4s, the sus2s, the hammer-ons, the pull-offs, the chord shapes as well. Another thing to mention here, we can see that John has got his capo on the 4th fret, and it sounds like he's detuned as well. So it means that if you want to play along with this, you'll have to detune all of your strings half a step, so one note lower, and then tune your low E string another full tone. So effectively in drop D, if that's how you want to approach it from standard tuning, dropping D, and once you've got that set up, just take every single string down half a step, just one note, and then you'll have the tuning that John's in here, so you can place on your capo on the 4th fret and attempt to play along. But playing along is going to be a bit of a challenge, especially if you're going to try and supply the vocal as well. I think a lot of players would be happy with getting this down as an instrumental piece, let alone supplying the vocal over the top. But John has everything so down with his techniques on that right hand. It's all subconscious. He can just let his hands go and then focus on the vocal. The first thing that I want to point out about teaming the vocal with the fingerstyle guitar on the right hand and everything that's going on with the left hand is that they do not sync up. And when I say that, I mean that the vocal is really freeform. The way that John sings, he isn't leaning into his chest voice here. He's got that conversational quality to his voice. But with that conversational quality comes a loose, freeform delivery with the vocal phrases, whereas the guitar has to be strict, it has to be in time, considering as well that he is using that percussive element by striking the guitar on 2 and 4 of the bar. So it means that he's got it driving forward the whole time with the guitar parts that are all spot on timing wise, but he's singing really loosely. So he's not using these cues on his guitar to time his vocal, which means that he's doing 2 things simultaneously but totally independently. So you start to appreciate, even if you don't play the guitar, the amount that is going on here, John's talent, his ability to do these things simultaneously and independently. Also, you start to understand why Eric Clapton said about John that he is so far ahead of everything, it's almost inconceivable. Something that John does occasionally is match up the melodic lines of the vocals with the guitar. So it means that while he's singing, you almost get the guitar supplying the harmony line in the background, and it's going to sound more dramatic when he throws that in there in small sections because it doesn't happen throughout the whole composition. And it is such a great way to double up that melody. And the other thing that I love about this song is the melody, just in general, because it sounds like we go from a chorus into a chorus because it is so strong. I don't think at any point throughout this composition and performance anyone will be sitting there thinking, oh, I'm bored of this because I've already heard it. There is so much to listen out to. You can just appreciate the lyrical content, the vocal, the delivery, and then when you rewatch it, you can start to get into the technique on the guitar, especially if you do play the guitar yourself. There is so much that you can take away from this. And when we are talking about that vocal delivery, sometimes it is so relaxed, it is so understated that you might want to have the lyrics up on screen because it's all down to that relaxed delivery. Sometimes John blends words together and also slides in to particular pitches in a really deliberate way. So you might want to be reading along with this just to give you guys an idea of the amount of technique and playing that is going on with John here. I'm going to show just a 10-second segment where we do see the left hand pretty close up. And I'm just going to pause and play and then pause and play and talk you through what's going on. I would get out the guitar myself, but unfortunately my little finger is still squashed, so I can't play at the moment. But I'll talk you guys through it. Straight away there, we had a slide into his A chord that he's barring with his first finger. And I'm going to refer to the tuning here and the strings as if the bottom of the guitar is where the capo is. So this is an A shape with the bar and the first finger. He does then press on his little finger onto the octaves of that A. So it's like an A5 effectively, but he doesn't really pluck those strings with the right hand. It's just placed on there as an extra little fill if he needs it. But let's get into the next shape. And now he's straight into a fill shape. And here he's got his second finger on the sus4. The third finger has come over to the F sharp. So we've got this fill, and watch the third finger that's playing the F sharp. We're now going up to a G. So he's got a little running bass line going on throughout this section. back down to the F sharp, and a tiny little hammer on there. He went to the open, or actually it would have been the barred A with his first finger. He played that and then hammered on with the third finger. As you can see, he's got his eyes closed. He's concentrating on the singing, but all of this playing that is going on, blink and you'll miss it, but we'll keep continuing. And there we went to a D shape, a little pull off with the first finger, and that is just going to be to the open G string. And now the first finger goes over to the B, and he's kept that over a D sus2, and all of the time, remember, on the right hand, he's hitting the guitar and the strings with the palm of his hand to get that percussive strike sound, but also picking out the strings. A little hammer on there, onto the B again on the open A string. And now, same fill again, playing that D, and the D sus2, but with the first finger, playing that second fret, which will be the A, pulling off that A. And then open strings into the slide, back to where he started on that barred A. So, that is 10 seconds that we're looking at there, and it gives you an idea of the amount that is going on with John's playing, all the while he is just delivering the vocal, thinking about his vocal phrases, the lyrical content, getting the emotion into that delivery vocally. There is so much to think about if you weren't John Martyn playing the guitar. But like I said, it is blink and you'll miss it. And even when you pause it and play it and pause it again, there might be a little hammer on or pull off that you might miss. But John just executes it so faultlessly, it just flows. And you listen to it as a composition, as a musical piece, as the art that it is. It's only when you really dig into the analysis that you see all of this technique that's going on. I do want to get into John's history and his career in this video as well, but he did release 23 studio albums over a 40-year career, so there is quite a lot in there. I'm not going to be able to cover it all, but I'll do my best to cover as much as possible. During John's early life, he spent his time between England and Scotland due to the fact that his parents divorced when he was 5 years of age, and they were both opera singers, so music definitely ran in the family. It also meant that John could speak with a Scottish accent and an English accent, so he could adapt his voice depending on where he was. He did go to art school, but he dropped out of art school in order to pursue a career in music. At the age of 17, this would have been in 1965, he got involved with the folk music scene here in Britain, being inspired by traditional English songs as well as American blues. And he did sign a deal at that point with Island Records, and it was 1967 that he released his first solo album, and that was called London Conversation, and in 1968 he followed that up with The Tumbler. In 1970, he released the album Stormbringer with his then wife, Beverly Martin, and they released another album together as a duo in 1970, and that was called The Road to Ruin. But that was their last album as a duo because Island Records thought that John would be better going forward as a solo artist and going back to that original setup for the first two albums. In 1971, he released Bless the Weather, and in 1973, Solid Air was released, and that album incorporated jazz influences as well as rock and a little bit more effects because John had his Echoplex tape delay in full effect on that album. It was commercially successful, and he followed that up instantly in the same year with his next album called Inside Out. In 1975, he released Sunday's Child, and he also released a live album, and this was from Leeds, but Island Records didn't want to release that live album, so John just got the album together himself and sent the orders out personally from home. Also at this point, unfortunately, in the late 70s, his marriage broke down and he started drinking a lot and doing a lot of drugs and started to get into a bit of a downward spiral. So being in a really dark place and going through personal struggles, he wrote the album Grace and Danger, and he released that in 1980. And this was an album full of raw emotion, and John said himself, it's what he's all about as a songwriter, and really cited that album as his favourite album because it was the most autobiographical. And Phil Collins, by the way, played drums on that album as well as producing backing vocals. Phil would also play drums and produce the next album, which was in 1981, and that was called Glorious Fool, and that turned into a number 30 hit in the album charts. In total, he released 5 albums in the 80s, and moving into the 90s, he released The Apprentice in 1990 and followed that up with Cool Tide in 1991. He also released 3 albums in that decade after those two, as well as a covers album. He kicked off the year 2000 by releasing Glasgow Walker, and in 2004 is when he released On the Cobbles, and this was an album that really went back to his acoustic sound, very much like we can see here in this performance. In 2008, he was awarded at the BBC Radio 2 Folk Awards the Lifetime Achievement Award. In the 2009 New Year Honours List, he was awarded an OBE, but sadly, just a few weeks after this, he would pass away in January of 2009 due to acute respiratory distress syndrome, and this was a result of his drug abuse and alcohol abuse over many years and left him in very bad health. He did continue up until his death and record material, so that meant that in 2011 Heaven and Earth was released posthumously. But it's great to have a look back at John in action here in 1973, showing his unique ability, his songwriting ability as well, something that I haven't mentioned about him being a totally original artist and writing his own songs, performing his own arrangements, of course, on the guitar, but having that top technical ability where those who do play the guitar had the utmost respect for John and still do. But thank you guys for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!